I want to share with you a story about entrepreneurialism and free enterprise that is so essential today in getting America back to work and creating those jobs that we so desperately need. But let's go back in history a little bit. The map that we're looking at on top here is a world is flat map. This map was published pre-Columbus in 1472. It is a woodblock engraving, meaning that it was carved into wood and then pressed into paper and then hand colored. It would be about 30 or 40 years before there was a big technology shift to copper engravings, but more about that later. There's a Thomas Friedman who published a book that was very popular in the international trade circles. In fact, it was a big hit with a very big audience. And it was called The World is Flat. And in this book, Mr. Friedman suggests that the world has become smaller because of the rapid advancement of information technologies. Anything that can be digitized can be zipped around the world in nanoseconds, allowing workers in low-cost countries like China and India to replace workers in higher-cost countries like the United States at a fraction of the cost. He says because of this, the world becoming smaller, it has become flatter. And therefore, that there's this huge shift now away from America and manufacturing in America to other parts in the world. This flattening of the world, he says, has created a level playing field. Well, the concept of a flat world today is just as wrong metaphorically as when Copernicus proved it to be literally wrong. Mr. Friedman has obviously never sold or exported anything in his life. For if he did, he would know the topography of world trade is full of insuperable mountains, rushing rivers, and shifting sands. The world trading system is plagued by distortions and manipulations and barriers. It's not that Americans are uncompetitive. It is the world trading system is corrupt and skewed against us. And we have an $800 billion trade deficit to prove it. And I want to tell you now about another Mr. Friedman, and that is a Mr. Milton Friedman. He wrote a groundbreaking book in 1962. It was published, Capitalism and Freedom. And it really changed the way that many people thought about how America should interact with the world. And in his book, Mr. Friedman suggests that any trade agreement is a good agreement, that America should open its markets wide to all of those products in the world, and it should not matter if American manufacturers had reciprocal rights to these foreign markets. And he uses the example of Japan. And before I get into that, I'd like to reference this map here. This is a map of Japan published in 1830 during the time of the samurai. And this is a samurai sword. A beautiful map. It's made on rice paper, and it's also a woodblock engraving. Actually, Japan was 300 years behind in technology in 1830 when this map was published. As I had said with The World is Flat, that the world had moved on to copper engravings. But Japan in the time of the samurai was a fascinating place. It was a country that was closed off to the world. But boy, how things had changed by 1962. And Mr. Friedman says in his book about Japan, if they want to send us all of these really nice things, these really cool things like stereos and televisions and motorcycles and then later cars, we should open our markets wide and think of them as a gift because we pay for them with paper. They send us all of these cool things and we send to them our paper currency. It was some kind of a cunning prank that America was playing on the world. You send us all your really nice things and useful things, and we're going to send you our paper. Because Mr. Friedman said that there was a mechanism in world trade that would correct this. Because after all, the Japanese cannot wear our dollars, they cannot live in our currency, nor can they eat our currency. They would accumulate our currency and then they would have to send it back to us by buying our really cool things that America makes in abundance. And then there would be this sort of natural mechanism that would balance trade. They would accumulate our currency, they would have nothing to do with it except to send it back to us. Well, they really never sent it back in the way that Mr. Friedman thought. Instead of buying our products, they bought our debt. They bought our debt, exerting incredible, enormous pressure on the United States. And after the Japan example, then others followed like Taiwan and Korea and now China, accumulating these huge trade surpluses with the United States, and instead of buying our products, buying our debt and exerting incredible pressure over the American economy. Milton Friedman actually used the example of Great Britain back in the middle of the 19th century, and that's really astounding to me, because after Great Britain, at the height of its empire, had opened its markets wide, within 70 years, they were broke and beaten. They opened their markets without demanding that their manufacturers have reciprocal trading rights to those foreign markets. I want to now tell you about there are solutions to our current trade problems, about this trade deficit that just will not go away. And as I said earlier, it's not because Americans are uncompetitive. It is the world trading system is corrupt and skewed against us. And the solutions are letting Americans compete, not building walls around our country, but simply allowing Americans the same access to foreign markets that those manufacturers have to the United States. The explosion of jobs in this country would be incredible. There would be an historic recalculation of our tax base. We would be able to reduce tax rates while increasing our tax base by simply allowing Americans to compete. It's about a new kind of interaction and a new kind of transaction that I cover in my book, Conscientious Equity. Conscientious because it is the right thing to do, and equity because we all have ownership in doing the right things. By simply unshackling the American entrepreneur and letting them travel and trade freely with the world, the only losers will be the corrupt and despotic dictators. And there will be so many millions of winners. You know, America is an exceptional country. When we do the right thing for ourselves, we lift up millions of citizens around the world with us. So please join me in this adventure of conscientious equity in changing the world and making it into a world that we will all be proud to live in.